This is New Zealand, located in the far South Pacific Ocean, about 4,000 kilometers from Australia. It is the second most peaceful country in the world. Most people in Asian countries know New Zealand primarily because of cricket. Brendan McCullum, Ross Taylor, Daniel Vettori. I knew New Zealand because of them, but New Zealand is world famous, especially for its magnificent mountain ranges, beautiful lakes, and high-quality organic food. Now, some of you may already know that the famous movie The Lord of the Rings was also filmed in these beautiful valleys of New Zealand. The weather in New Zealand is similar to the UK. Mild summers, long winters, and substantial rain. Despite this, New Zealand's population is not even 7% of the UK's population. If you look at this map of New Zealand, you will see that about 80% of New Zealand is completely empty and uninhabited. 70% of New Zealand's population lives here in the North Island, and 50% of the North Island's population lives in this one city, Auckland. With such amazing weather, beautiful scenery, low crime rate, and a high standard of living, why is 80% of New Zealand empty? Today, we will find the answer to this question. The truth is, if we first look at the world map, you will notice that New Zealand is very far from the rest of the world. This means if you board a plane from Pakistan or India, you'll cross the entire Arabian Sea and the Indian Ocean, and after a flight of about 18 to 22 hours, you'll reach New Zealand. The question now arises, how did humans get to this island so far from the world? There are multiple views on this. If we look at New Zealand's official website, it states that 1,000 years ago, roughly between 1320 and 1350, the Maori people discovered New Zealand. The people living on all these islands in the Pacific Ocean, also called the Polynesian Islands, were called the Maori. According to official sources, around the 13th century, the Maori left all their islands boarded large canoes and arrived here in New Zealand. This was roughly the same era when the Mongols and Genghis Khan were taking control over all of Asia. But the question arises, why did these people leave their old islands and come to New Zealand? To investigate this question, when we did some research, some articles revealed a slight difference in the Maori's own historical records. According to their accounts, New Zealand was discovered not in the 13th century, but 500 years earlier, around 750 AD, by a Maori named Kupe. Kupe was a fisherman who caught fish for himself and his tribe. But then, a problem started. Whenever he cast his net, octopuses found in that area would eat his fish, and they would be left with nothing. Now, since their main food source was fish, a significant problem began to arise. The solution was that Kupe and some of his companions would go out to sea and try to find another island where there was a good supply of food and water. On this quest, Kupe set out into the Pacific Ocean with 20 to 25 men. After a few days of travel, they saw an island with large mountains. This was New Zealand, an island rich in seafood, sheep, goats, and fruits, and no other humans. This was the perfect place for Kupe and his tribe. Kupe sent a few of his companions back to the Polynesian Islands to tell the others about this island, and this is how the Maori people began to settle in New Zealand. Until the 17th century, the Maori people lived peacefully in New Zealand, and due to their distance from the world, they had neither enemies, nor any threat from anyone. But all this was about to change very soon. This was the time when Western nations were spreading across the whole world to increase their power. Explorers were being sent to discover island countries and continents that European countries could conquer to increase their power. In this pursuit, a Dutch explorer, Abel Tasman, set out in search of a continent in the South Pacific Ocean, because Europeans at that time believed that there must be a continent in this region, and if there was, it would open the doors to many opportunities for European countries. In 1642, Tasman discovered New Zealand, but when he tried to land there, he had a forceful, bloody conflict with the Maori people, and he was forced to flee. Then, in 1769, a British officer, James Cook, reached New Zealand while also looking for this continent. Once again, there was a fierce battle between James's soldiers and the Maori people, and many Maori were killed. James Cook had to go back, but this time he created a detailed map of New Zealand and his entire journey. And through this map, Europeans began to reach the island in the 18th century. This time, they dealt with the Maori people in a very smart way. By tempting them with trade and profit, the British started building their naval ports there, and then, just 100 years later, the British took complete control of New Zealand. A treaty was signed between the British and the Maori people in 1840, which is called the Treaty of Waitangi. After this treaty, New Zealand officially became a part of Europe and the British Empire. At that time, the Maori population was about 200,000, but in the next 100 years, this population, instead of increasing, decreased from 200,000 to 40,000. There were two main reasons for this. Actually, when European people came here, they brought with them diseases that were common in Europe at the time. The problem was that the Maori people had not developed immunity to these diseases, and that is why, after European immigration, the local Maori people began to get sick and die. Second, in the 19th century, New Zealand had become a very violent place. Just 5 years after the Treaty of Waitangi, a series of wars started between the British and the local Maori over land ownership, which continued for the next 40 years. That in these wars, a lot of local Maori were killed, and finally, this entire situation stopped in 1881 when all the major Maori chiefs had been killed, and the Maori movement was severely crushed. Now, the British also understood that progress could not be made without including the locals in the development process. And so, immediately after these wars, the British government made the locals key stakeholders in every development project, from the electoral process. And in this way, the journey of peace and progress finally began in New Zealand. But even today, as we showed you at the beginning of the video, why is so much of New Zealand area empty, and why does everyone live here in the North Island? Actually, the southern region of New Zealand is completely empty because it is nearly impossible to live or construct anything in this entire area. The southern part of New Zealand is covered with mountain ranges everywhere. This entire area is full of high mountains, and the terrain is such that even building basic infrastructure like roads is almost impossible. On the other side of the mountains, the land on the eastern side is very dry and infertile, which means irrigation is not possible here either. That is why the majority of New Zealand's population lives here on the North Island. To solve this problem of population shortage, the New Zealand government relaxed its immigration policy after World War II. Before World War II, the entry of non-white people was prohibited in New Zealand, and because of this, New Zealand's population remained stagnant until the 1950s. After these restrictions were removed, people from Asia, especially China, the Philippines, and India, began to settle here, and New Zealand's population finally started to see a much-needed boom. Today, almost 27% of New Zealand's population are immigrants or people who were born outside New Zealand. The majority of immigrants live here in Auckland and its surrounding areas, and this is why Auckland is now one of the least affordable cities in the world, because the land supply is low and the demand for housing is high. To solve this problem, the New Zealand government is now giving grants of up to $8,000 to people so they will shift to Waikato, 100 kilometers away from Auckland, so that the pressure on Auckland's housing market is reduced and prices normalize. A very interesting thing is that New Zealand's entire agriculture industry runs on exporting animal meat. Due to rain in the North Island, there is lush green land, which is why countless sheep, goats, and cows are found here. New Zealand's population is about 5 million, while according to one estimate, the population of sheep and goats here is almost 30 million. That is why New Zealand is the world's largest exporter of mutton and sheep wool. 95% of New Zealand's meat is exported abroad, and in 2019, New Zealand earned a revenue of $46 billion from these exports. New Zealand is the world's 50th largest economy, and the main source of revenue for this economy is agricultural exports. Earning $46 billion just from meat exports is an unbelievable thing, and this should be a motivation for Asian countries as these are agricultural countries. If you liked today's video, please like it and subscribe to the channel. These are all the sources we consulted for this video. See you in the next video. Take care. Goodbye.